Welcome to the Humans of Hospitality podcast. I know so many of you listening to this show love your local bar, your local restaurant, maybe your local hotel, and have so many fond memories of time in hospitality businesses. This is the podcast where we get to chat to the human beings behind the scenes of that industry. Maybe the chefs or the bakers or the coffee roasters or the gin distillers or the craft brewers or the entrepreneurs, but all doing an amazing job of making sure that hospitality stays interesting and the big, dull, formulaic brands do not take over our high street. Please enjoy the show. In this week's podcast episode, we are chatting to Michael Davies from Dorset Blue Vinny and the Dorset Blue Soup Company. Now, unique is often a misused word, but this week you'll hear about a delicious food product that really is one of a kind. In the early 1980s, dairy farmer Michael Davies resurrected a 300-year-old recipe for Dorset Blue Vinny, a subtly veined cheese which is much more delicate than Stilton, its nearest relative. Now, nowadays, Michael's daughter Emily is in charge of production, overseeing the only farm in the world that has the legal right to produce this type of blue cheese. And today you're going to hear how the patient Davies family had to put up with blue mould on their cornflakes in the early days of Michael's cheese experiments, and why Emily describes beta versions as nuclear. You'll also discover how a disappointing trip to a farmer's market led to a whole branch of the Blue Vinny business developing, and why wonky cucumbers and misshapen cheese offcuts have a special place in Emily's heart. I very much hope you enjoy this week's conversation. Okay, morning, Emily. Thank you so much for sparing the time to allow me to invade your business and almost your home.
Yeah, absolute pleasure, Mark. Absolute pleasure to welcome you here.
So I've just driven across the country, as I often start these podcasts now, because I keep ending up in the most random of places. Can you just explain where in the world are we, please?
Yeah, well, we're in the depths of Dorset, really, North Dorset. So we're about 6 miles from Sherborne and about 5 miles from Sturminster Newton.
Okay, yeah. And this is the actual farm where you produce your...
And this is the actual farm and the only farm that actually produced Dorset Blue Vinny cheese. Yeah, exactly. So this is the family home. This is where I grew up, me and my brother. So yes, this is where it's always been.
I'm excited to find out how you ended up here, but Blue Vinny is pre-you, isn't it? And Blue Vinny, which I've known for years. I guess I'm from Dorset, but I'm hoping people across the country know it as well. It's got an amazing reputation, and I can't wait to hear it. But yeah, pre your involvement, it had a pretty kind of interesting history, I think. Can you just explain, where did Blue Vinny come from before your family even?
Yeah, there's a lot of history behind the cheese, which makes it quite mystical and magical, really. And it used to be made in nearly every farmhouse in Dorset, really, when the farmer's wife would basically hand skim the milk and leave the cream for the farmer's wife to make the cheese and butter from. And then times changed, and the MMB, the Milk Marketing Board, came on board, and basically the farmer then could command a much better price for his milk. And so the farmer would say, well, that's no more milk for the wife then, for the butter and the cheese. So it was all going up to London to be sold. So the cheese eventually actually completely died a death. But when it was made in lots of farmhouses, there was some brilliant stories about how it used to go blue, by using slug slime, to dragging mouldy horse harnesses through the milk, to standing the farmers' dirty wellies by the vat. I guess you'll be pleased that we don't use any of those now.
Have you tested any of those theories? Do they actually work?
That's right, no. We stayed away with, but we make a very good modern interpretation, we like to think, yeah.
I'm looking forward to hearing, the modern interpretation of a horse harness.
Exactly. So the mind boggles, yeah. So and it was because the cheese then died out. It itself shrouded itself in mystery, really. And
when was that? When did it actually die out?
So that was just after the war, really.
Second War.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And but it had been around for nearly 300 years.
And that was around the time that milk prices
Yeah.
had that impact.
Yeah,
so.
That's right. Yeah, it's.
Okay. And then your dad he found a recipe, or he had a recipe that was something like 300 years old. What's that story?
Yeah, my dad, and he resurrected it entirely, because it was in a time, early 1980s, when we were in the time of butter mountains, milk floods, and he was getting up every day at 4:30, 4:45 to milk 250 cows, and for a product that nobody wanted.
So he was a dairy farmer.
He was a dairy
already.
farmer here on the farm. Yeah, he was a dairy farmer, and became quite soul destroying, really. And so he just thought, well, what can I do? What can I do to keep myself motivated? And he'd actually trained as a cheesemaker and not as a farmer. I mean, he was actually the son of a naval officer who actually, when Grandpa left the Navy, also came into farming as well. Right. But Dad was at Cannington College, and he went down there to train in farming and agriculture. But when he turned up down there and was shown around the college, and when they opened the classroom to the dairy course, the cheese-making course, well, when he saw, I think, that there was probably a ratio of 25 women to about 3 men, I think that was the decider that he was going to go that route rather than the farming. So he had cheese-making as he had been trained as a cheesemaker. And we had a great friend who said, Michael, have you ever thought about making cheese? And he said, well, I have got a bit of knowledge on it. But of course, right where we are right on the cusp of big cheddar country, big cheddar boys surrounding us. And he also knew that he didn't want to make a soft cheese. So somebody said to him, well, what about Dorset Blue Vinny? It's gone, it's died a death, it's legendary. So we started here in the early 1980s, second-hand vat in the garage. And we made our first batch of cheese. Well, it was it was quite interesting. We then matured the cheese in Mum's pantry in the farmhouse here. And we sort of always laugh because we remember it all so well, that when we actually cut the cheese eventually, the walls have gone blue in the pantry. I mean, it was just a nightmare. It was an absolute nightmare. And anyway, when we cut the cheese, we always laugh because we think it had a shelf life of about 0.2 seconds.
Really?
It was nuclear,
Wow.
Yeah, it was.
Well, you just were looking at this was your dad as he was some sort of crazy eccentric, were you? Was this planned was it a deliberate ploy from day one to try and make this a big business?
Yeah.
Or...
I think obviously that was probably his end game. He was quite a leader in the market, I think, in as much as in the last 10 years, 15 years, it's all been about the buzzwords have been, diversify and, value add. And, my dad did that 35 years ago, or started to look at 35, for which we're really proud of him. We're really proud of the cheese, but we're really proud that he thought about that then. And I guess he wanted to, make what he was doing, getting up every day, working hard, to produce something that people did want.
And you mentioned the trigger was the glut of milk. Why did we have that with the butter mountains and stuff? I sort of remember it distantly, but can't remember the reasons why.
To be honest, I probably couldn't give you any real reasons of why, but...
and has that changed now, though? Is it no longer the... I mean, I know there's
because
problems.
they introduced quotas and
Right.
because there was obviously certain
So
supply and demand to try and level the market. But... it's changed beyond. The industry has changed massively now. But
and have you still got the same number of cows? Because I know.
Yeah, so we're about
250
now. 250. Yeah, but
and that was the same back then.
Yeah, it was probably not quite as many. Just around about 200, 220. So we're around about 250 now. We rear all our own replacements and everything. So
we're still doing milk as well, or is it all
no, absolutely.
Okay. So how long did it take to get the cheese right then? Back into your.
I don't think we have yet.
It's a great answer. It's never finished.
I honestly don't think we have.
How long will it be in your generation?
Oh my goodness, no.
But you're no longer scraping it off the walls, at least. And your cornflakes were going mouldy when you were a kid, then, were they? Or
cornflakes, marmalade. Everything, we'd open up something, or lift the lid or something, and go, oh, Mum's holding an experiment in here. But it was.
My wife was patient with all of my crazy plans, but I think, although she's a big fan of blue cheese, but I think if everything in the house tasted it, she might be funny.
Yeah. But so Dad soon quickly got his marching orders. When it started to said, right, actually, you know what, it's a divorce or out down there. So we actually converted one of the cowbirds down at the bottom of the yard. And that's where we still make it today, so not much has
Does
really
it last
changed.
longer now than 0.2
seconds?
It
last a bit. It does last a bit longer now, yeah. Yes, and it is, you say when did we perfect? We haven't.
Yeah.
I think, but that's the magic of the product as well. It's handmade. It really does vary. We used to say it would vary according to what colour socks my dad would wear when he was milking. It was that much of a diva, and it varies on the weather, on where what the cows are eating. But we diet feed the cows now, so it's much more tightly regulated what the cows are being fed.
Okay.
So you don't have the fluctuations like we used to have.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. I was going to say, were the fluctuations because of the specific type of cheese it is, or is that the same in all cheese, or did you just come up with a particularly complicated one?
It would be the same for all cheese. Completely dependent on the cow's diet, and I remember Dad declining from a feed merchant a large consignment of bananas, because they'd come in and he said, they were trying to flog them as feed. And we said, well, we can't have bananas here because it'll make the cheese taste of bananas.
I think the cows eat bananas.
Yeah, well, there we go. Who knows? Who knows? But we experienced it when we put them on the turnips. We used to grow turnips, and we put the cows on the turnips, and oh dear, that was a bit whack. Oops, yeah.
And it
the
makes a
flavour
big
comes
difference
through.
even all the way through, because you're talking
Massive.
about, it's a few stages through the process, isn't it? By the time you've got the way, what's the process then of making your cheese, and how does that compare to other cheese? I'm going to use my naivety now, having never made a cheese. So what's the process? Okay,
so we use the morning milk from our own herd here. So we bring that down in the morning.
As opposed to the afternoon.
As opposed to the afternoon.
Brilliant. I love this detail. So what's the difference between the morning milk and the afternoon milk?
So it tends to be a little bit higher in fat and the butter content.
I love that. I love that level of detail.
The whole kind of the kind of milk makeup is a little bit different. Yeah.
Nice.
So the morning milk comes down, and then it's pumped into the vat, and it then sits for about an hour and a half, a couple of hours.
Right.
And then we hand skim the milk. So it was always a hand skimmed cheese, so a slightly crumblier cheese, lower in fat. It's obviously not a low in fat because but it's hand skimmed. So we take the cream off, and then we add all the magic goodies, so the starter and the rennet, and actually we add the blue in a liquid form at that stage as well.
Right.
So that all goes in. And then it's all...
What is the blue?
So it's actually a Roquefort penicillium. So it is...
So I haven't come to use that recipe, but I just wonder what it is, not to say.
Yeah, and that's in a liquid format. Really. Okay. So it's all added and stirred, and then it's rested, and then it's left overnight. And then in the morning, you've got this brilliant vision of a mattress. That's the only way I can describe it. Of a mattress of curd with in amongst the whey. So you've got your real curds and whey scenario.
Okay.
And then it's ground down into very small pieces, and it's packed into the moulds. All of this is done by hand. Right. All of it's done by hand, and they're packed into the moulds. And then it's a case of just nurturing it, turning them every day to make sure that the drainage works. And
for how long?
So they are turned every day for their first 8 weeks of their life. Wow. Every day. Yeah. And
you do this every day? Or?
Yep. Yeah. Well, so we make between 3 and 5 times a week, depending on the time of year and various different things. And so, so they're turned every day for the first 8 weeks of their life. And then after that, they're turned every other day. And then they go out anything from sort of 15 weeks up to 18 weeks old.
Amazing. Like a little child out into the world.
Yeah.
And then there's lots of blue cheeses. So what's distinctive apart from that actual journey sounds incredibly labour intensive, and they obviously get a lot of love along the way if you do it all by hand. But are there other things that make it particularly distinctive? Not the bananas.
Is that bananas? The specifics grazing of the pastures of the Blackmore Vale. We're here on Oxford clay. But its nearest relative as a cheese would be Stilton.
Right.
But our cheese is much more delicate. It has a much more delicate veining pattern than a Stilton. So for some other blue cheeses, you can get quite a hard-hitting impact of flavour, whereas ours is much more subtle and the veining pattern is much more subtle. So people are often surprised that it's not as strong
as quite creamy. I think,
yeah, that's
my wife's
right. It
favourite,
maintains its creamy. Yeah, exactly, and that's what we really like. So we can get that veining pattern, but it's not a hard hitting. It's just a slightly lighter, peppery tasting blue cheese.
Well, it's interesting to know it's not finished, because I think most people think you've nailed it, isn't it? And in 1998, you were given what's the accreditation?
So in 1998 we were awarded the first people to be awarded a protected food name for a food in Britain, in which we got awarded the protected geographical indicator, a PGI.
Right.
So that basically says that if anybody else wants to make the cheese, they can make the cheese, but they have to make it to our recipe.
Oh, really? They
to try and allow some sort of standardisation, so that you have a,
Okay.
But
they have to have your permission, or they can make it?
So we have to work it. But it's always a little bit interesting, because as soon as we struggle to make two batches the same, I'm not sure how well would go, but yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. So, because that's quite common in France, they have a reputation for really putting, the fact that we can't call English sparkling wine champagne and Rioja and all that kind of stuff, I suppose. But that was unprecedented back then. Has it happened a lot more since?
There are many more now foods that are protected.
Okay.
Stilton is protected, and the Melton Mowbray pork pie.
It would be odd. I suppose it happens, doesn't it? It would feel odd if Dorset Blue Vinny was made anywhere than apart from in Dorset,
well, it would be slightly odd, wouldn't it?
Yeah, but I suppose it's become a brand name. But that's been helpful.
And it's definitely.
Okay. So at that time, when this was all happening, all the kind of the creative side, how old were you then?
So I was about 8.
Okay, fine.
8
you
or
clearly
9.
remember it well then.
Yes. There's slightly bizarre goings on.
So what point, because you didn't come straight into the kind of family farming then, you were teaching,
No.
was it tennis
or
something?
That's right.
What was your journey?
My journey was slightly odd, and I went to school locally, and then I really didn't know what I wanted to do, to be honest. I wanted to be outside. I didn't want to be stuck in an office. I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And
did you specifically not want to be on the farm, or was that...
No, not at all. No, I think probably it was more a case of Mum and Dad probably didn't want to encourage it. Probably really? Not entirely. Sport was a big part of my life. I loved my sport, particularly my tennis. But my mum was a sports teacher, and of course, the encouragement would have been to go that way, but because she was a sports teacher, obviously that was a good enough reason not to do it, wasn't it?
Of course, absolutely. Yeah.
So anyway, I did cause I had a little bit of a bumpy road really, but I ended up at Sparshall Agricultural College and did a 2-year business and finance up there, and absolutely loved it. I met some brilliant people, and I absolutely loved it. It gave me a good balance between, farming life and office based really. But when I was up there, when I was coming home, it was inevitably busy times, Christmas and all that sort of thing. So I'd always be pretty involved down in the cheese room, and started doing a few hampers and gifty things like that. And then that was really my life at college. But I then ended up I worked at Broadlands up in Romsey for nearly 4 years as a farm secretary. I absolutely loved it. It was a cracking job. It was a brilliant way of seeing a different side of farming, a much bigger farm and estate compared to, what we're doing here. And then I think the kind of being outside itch probably got a bit too big to scratch. So I said, you know what, I've got it. So I went off and trained in got various teaching qualifications for sport, but I ended up on a tennis court for nearly 10 years.
Did you?
Yeah,
wow.
Teaching tennis for 10
Locally,
years.
or?
Yeah, at Sherborne Tennis Club, and then travelling around and...
Okay.
I loved it.
Was your mum pleased?
Absolutely loved it. Yeah, she was.
Finally.
And actually, with great respect, she managed to avoid those words. I told you
Did
so.
She? Well
yes,
I'm
never quite sure how. But yeah. So.
Okay, excellent. So at some point though, there's a trigger that brings you back into the family business.
Yes.
What was that? Were you getting tired on the tennis court?
No, I absolutely loved it. I absolutely loved it. But of course, it brought me back to living back here at home, and so I was right in the middle of it, and
Were your brothers working?
And my brother runs the farm. He was back, so we were we were both back here. I think Mum and Dad thought, what have we done wrong we haven't got a shot of either of them. And I said, we want to take it as a compliment, really, that we're happy to be here.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because with this style of business, what happens if you don't? Because they're challenging businesses.
Yeah.
They either end up closing.
Yeah.
I don't know. Inevitably, there seems to be multi-generations of farmers.
Yeah.
Rarely do they seem to get sold as a going concern.
That's
It kind of
right.
like the herd ends up leaving, and you end up living here. So presumably they were at some point excited to see you, weren't they? Once they got over the shock.
Sure, they just were delighted.
You rocked up in the kitchen. I've got the food system again.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly. So I guess I was part. Just being here.
So it evolved rather than a specific trigger that
absolutely.
went... You didn't get a phone call and go, help, we're
no,
buried
definitely not.
We're buried in whey.
No, that's right. No, I think you absolutely have to kind of carve your niche a little bit, because just as a family business, you couldn't just rock it and say, well, here I am, and what can I do? And now I want paying for it. It doesn't work like that. You have to prove yourself. So I thought, okay, so it was an opportunity for me to start going to farmers markets, which we weren't doing anything like that, you see. So, and it was the kind of onset of the farmers market, which was
okay.
Brilliant.
So by this point, the cheese is established, and you're selling
the cheese is established.
Or the family are selling it. At
yes,
point.
yeah,
Okay.
going through a healthy infrastructure of cheese wholesalers, really.
Right.
So everybody, they would come here, collect it, and then they do all the distribution for us, of which is exactly how we operate still today.
Okay. So
Yeah.
how long ago was it that you came back in? Properly?
So I came home in about 96, 97.
Wow.
Yeah.
And when it sound it's a fair old amount of time then, isn't
Yeah,
it?
I reckon it was 96, 97, roundabout. Yes.
Okay. And at that point, were there specific changes that needed to be made, or like you say, you came in and your bit was the route to market, wasn't it?
Yes.
The farmers markets.
Yeah, just looking at different avenues, really.
You didn't come in and go, hey, I need to revolutionise this business.
No, not at all.
Or wind anyone up. It was
absolutely
continued
not.
that evolutionary journey.
Yeah, definitely. It was just about perhaps having the opportunity to go out there and just put it in front of the consumer directly. And of course we were lucky, we had the farmers market in Sherborne, and they were really up and coming, and it was an ideal way to talk to people about it, really, because we're lucky we work with these wholesalers, and it's brilliant. The downside to that is that we lose track of where it goes, so it's quite difficult to locate stockists the whole time. So that's a kind of ever sort of a problem that we never really get to the bottom of. We're always that's work in progress the whole time. So it was nice to get out in front of people and get them to try the cheese. And
okay, have you ever been any places where you've turned up and found your cheese and been surprised and gone, No,
I don't think so. No.
Okay, but it's growth since then. At that point, was this I don't know how. You make something like how many tons of cheese is it you now make?
So we make about 3.5 tons a month.
A month.
Yes.
Okay, fine. And what was it back then? Has it been a big level of growth?
Yeah, that's right. Yes, it would have been sort of half a ton
right.
a month. Yeah,
okay.
Exactly. So
and how have you achieved that then? What's been the?
It's just been a good, steady, better bit of marketing, I suppose. Just getting it out there, having a slightly more consistent product. I use the word slightly more because it does still fluctuate. And actually, some people love that fluctuation because it's real. It keeps the product really, really real.
So even now with the controlled diet on the cows, what are the other variables then that still
Well, of course, we were
change?
unpasteurised then. So, which made a massive difference in as much as to the milk whereas now we are unfortunately pasteurising the cheese.
Okay.
Yeah.
And why is that? Because most people.
Because we're living in a high risk TB area. Yeah.
Okay.
So because we farm in a high risk TB, it's
right. And that's regulated then, is it? That you're it's compulsory.
No, absolutely not compulsory. Okay. No. But having rubbed shoulders with a little bit of EU legislation 4 years ago, it became massively apparent that we could not live under the threat of it, because the business could disappear overnight.
Yeah.
So the decision was made that we would switch to being pasteurised, because then we could control what we were doing, and we weren't in the...
And again, you're going to have to excuse my naivety, but how does that help? So TB is normally caught how? And is it a case of if one cow catches it, you lose your herd?
No, there's a testing programme that goes on. We're tested very regularly. It's a political hot potato.
Is it? I'm going to ready for one of your rants. Come on.
Very much so. No, that's probably you might have to edit rather. Yeah, it's a real political hot potato.
Okay.
It's devastating. It's absolutely devastating. We're tested regularly. If anything is found with TB, then obviously they're sent to isolation and then they're culled.
Really? The entire herd, or just
the
cows?
Those animals that are, and then you're tested again. We're on a treadmill. I think it's the frustrating thing about TB is that it doesn't reflect the way you farm. It's not whether you're a good farmer, bad farmer, indifferent farmer, or where you farm. It's very, very frustrating.
Okay.
Yeah.
And why is this a particularly high risk area?
Because there's quite a high population of badgers, and they believe that the badgers are obviously involved in
that's another
TB
political hot potato.
Very much so.
There's
several at the moment.
Topics to avoid. Oh no, we're going down this. I was going to say rabbit hole, but clearly badger hole.
Yeah.
So, okay. Yeah, but I think it's important because people don't realise the complexities of what goes on in the food chain. They've literally got no idea, and too often. This is my worry, is that we end up compromising so much. We have it in our sector with regards to food allergies to a certain extent, but certainly food calories on every dish. And I've mentioned this before, but for me, food should be local and seasonal and ethical, and it does change, and it changes all the time. And therefore, when you get to the kitchen side of it, and chefs actually using it, you might use a different amount of blue vinny or a different amount of salt or stock or a different amount of meat, depending on how tender it is.
Yeah.
And therefore, if you're getting food in a proper kitchen, made fresh, actually having a complete list of, to the nearest calorie and every single allergen is really tricky. So you understand the motivation to legislate, but sometimes we seem to do it the wrong way, because you get to the point where all food's got to be produced in a clinical factory and not made by real human beings.
Absolutely. And that's where we're still very lucky that we can, we are using our own milk. It's still very much handmade. It isn't, every batch is not the same.
No.
When you walk through the maturing rooms, they're individuals. They are individuals, as bonkers as that might sound. I've probably inhaled too much ammonia down there in my time, but they're all individuals.
And do you still get a buzz out of that? That management process is literally loving each
because
part of the journey.
They are so. It comes with so many frustrations as well, which is why you need the lows to make the highs, don't you? And it can be so frustrating. But it equally is so rewarding, and we're really, really proud of what we do, and we've got a cracking team behind us, and without them, it's impossible. You have to be pulling in the same direction as a small team,
with those variables, is it ever disastrous enough that you have to throw a batch away, or is it? I mean, what can you do once it's there and you've got to turn it and love it? But how do you actually go? This isn't quite right. What effect can you have on the process?
So you can. I mean, there are sort of areas in the process. They talk about a slow vat, which is something, if you don't quite get the acidity as you should do for when you're making cheese, and so then it won't mature as you want it to, and it will. For us, it will come out very cheddary and might not go blue. So, but it's very unusual. There are steps you can put in place to prevent that. So, which we obviously do, but you can have the odd one on occasions. But touch wood, for the last 4 or 5 years, there's been,
That feels like a pretty good run.
Yeah, it feels like a pretty good run.
I don't
yes, it does.
I'm touching wood for you now as well.
Exactly. Yes, but there are ones that will go bluer faster than the other ones. There are. Last year, in all that heat, I know it sounds a bit mad, but that heat did affect them. It was so intense, that heat. When you've got to get the humidity right and the temperature control right, and if you're inevitably opening a door and it's so hot outside, you're drawing in warm air, and that had a big impact. Likewise, when we have a really, really cold, that upsets them all as well.
Well, I share your enthusiasm and love for the fact that it's a product that's different because it shows it's fresh and it shows it's handmade. How does that compare then? Because I don't know. Did you supply supermarkets? No. Is that a conscious decision or?
It's yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It's a conscious decision because there's a lack of probably understanding.
Well, I was going to say, I presume that variability would be a problem for them anyway, and it would be a problem for you. And I've only known you for 40 minutes, but I know you wouldn't compromise already and just say, okay, fine, yes, we'll do this to the cheese to make it last longer. So what's going on then? Presumably, your average person, Joe Bloggs, walking into the supermarket and buying a different product. How are they managing that process differently and that variability? And presumably, they're doing some stuff to that product that you wouldn't agree with and that makes yours better. Can you explain that a little bit?
I don't really honestly know much about it, but they'll just be, they're much bigger. It'll be a factory environment as opposed to very much a farmhouse environment, that we're working in. And probably they wouldn't let the heat of the summer last year affect their cheese. They'd be probably, dare I say it, much more on it. But that's not how we are, we enjoy those variables. It's the challenge, it keeps it real for us. Yeah. I think if every day we were turning out exactly the same.
How boring. How dull the world would be. Well, that's the point of this. I always say, we don't want the world to be beige and formulaic and dull. It's the same with
sealed. That's
formulaic restaurants. But are there cheats they can do? So I certainly know with smoked cheese, for example, you can smoke cheese properly with smoke, or you can inject, chemical smoke and stuff like that. Is there the same sort of thing in the blue cheese? Are there ways of taking shortcuts?
I would doubt it because it's quite a scientific.
So the process
method, yes, is very scientifically, and you have to achieve levels of acidity, and I can't imagine that there are too many corners that can be cut. Yeah.
So, well, I'm glad you don't know, so that's good, is it? No point cheating, just keep doing it with love. And you've had some good years, so now you seem to be well known. Do you distribute nationally? You say you go to the wholesalers. Does the cheese go all over the country? Does it go abroad? Or?
Yeah, so the cheese has got national distribution. Right. Obviously, we're much stronger in the southwest. And it's got quite a loyal following.
It has, you have a phenomenal reputation. You personally, actually, everybody I meet who goes, she's absolutely lovely, it'll be great to go and see you. But also, equally, your cheese locally. And I don't know enough nationally, which is what I'm interested in. But in Dorset, I think everybody knows Dorset Blue Vinny, which is incredible, really.
It's nice because everybody is a little piece of it. I think we particularly notice it when we do go to shows and online at Christmas time and things like that, because people are buying it for their grandpa who now lives in Nottingham or something, or an auntie that has had it for ages and have great fond memories, or they've moved away from the county and but they still have really lovely fond memories of the cheese. So it's always really lovely to see that people are buying it because they want to pass it on as a gift to somebody who's. We've got national distribution. We don't actually export. No.
You're not sending it to France. I always like that. I was interviewing English sparkling wines now going to France.
I know. It's absolutely brilliant. But we love it when people say, we're taking this to France.
Yeah.
Or somebody called in last week and they're taking it to America. It was found on a cruise ship in Antarctica.
Really?
Somebody's taking it to New Mexico next week. So people are taking it, but
people send you photos of your cheese in
absolutely, exactly. It's brilliant, isn't it? So we love to hear that. But to be honest, Mark, distribution is one of our biggest headaches, right? Because it has to travel chilled. Okay. For the business, for wholesalers and all of that, and export, it has to go chilled. So we've always stayed well away from any sort of distribution. Leave it to the professionals, and these cheese wholesalers know what they're doing. Right. Sometimes we struggle to get it to Bournemouth.
Really?
It's difficult, to always. Somebody wanted it in Romsey. They would go, oh, gosh, where are we? It's difficult.
This is if you do it yourself. So you do some deliveries yourself.
No, nothing. All through the wholesalers. Yeah, exactly. Okay. So but I guess that comes back as well to, these delis. We are reliant on the delis, on the butchers, on those small independents, coffee shops, cafes, farm shops. Those are our absolute lifeblood that we are totally reliant on, and working with them.
Okay, because I see your products a lot and we use it a lot in our restaurants, and I see it in a lot of bars and restaurants. No, thank you. It's great to have we'll always try and find an English product if we can. We always want it to be local as possible. It's great that you're Dorset, but even British would be great.
Yeah.
Because I certainly think historically the cheese board, was always classically French, and it seems ridiculous because we make so many incredible cheeses, and we make really diverse cheeses. It's not just about the cheddar, is it?
No.
We do some incredible cheeses in
Amazing.
Britain. And in the same way as English sparkling wine, I think finally people have started to catch up and realise that. I used to get upset. So a couple of years ago with cider, and all of a sudden my bar team started importing cider. It was some sort of Norwegian cider became into fashion, and I was like, man, we've been making cider for multi-generations in this country. Apples is something we're really good at. I get it with coffee and definitely certain wine that really is really hot countries, but when we make a beautiful product, I think it's important that we celebrate it.
And shout out.
So presumably the bars and restaurants are a significant part of your customer base. Do you know from the wholesalers where most of your stuff goes? Does it go directly to the consumer, or does it generally go, bars and restaurants, or is it a bit of a split?
It's a good split, whether it's going into food service and going in that way on cheese balls or being cooked with, or again into the independents, into the farm shops and delis and being served from their chilled counter, from their deli counter. Yes, so it's a good split.
But you often presumably turn up in a pub and see it on the menu.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah. We're.
Do you always have to order it and make sure they've treated it well?
My dad, if he goes in and sees it somewhere, he very often will make the admission to making it. But
that's funny.
It's always a really lovely feeling to see it. To see it on the menu is awesome, because the great thing about our cheese is it is multifunctional. You can put it on the cheese board, and obviously it's fantastic, but especially with our chutney, or you can cook with it. Yeah. So you see it in so many different forms. It's absolutely brilliant. Whether it be in a quiche, in a burger. You could on a steak. There's so many different formats that you can see our cheese in,
and even soup. So
and
you've
soup.
diversified. So how did that? How long ago was it you got into soup, and how did that happen?
So that was a mistake, or in as much as you kind of end up. How did that happen? I was coming back from Frome Farmers Market actually one day, and I had a bit of cheese left over, and I thought, now what am I going to do with this? And because once we've cut it, because we only sell to the wholesalers here, once I'd cut it into a piece, it effectively was waste. So anyway, I just had a harebrained idea that I would make soup. And my godmother was in the catering industry, Wendy Horn, and so at the time she had a unit just up the road. So I arrived on the Monday morning and said, right, Wendy, what can you do this? I want to make soup. So she made some leek and potato and put a bit of cheese in it, and we worked with it and we potted it, and then the rest is history, really.
At the time you did that, was this just for your lunch, or straight away were you thinking?
Straight away I was thinking, right now, I think this is a commercial opportunity. Yeah, I think it could sit really well. We could use the second grade cheese, of which inevitably, because it was a handmade product, there was some of that coming through. Generally the second grade is aesthetics, unfortunately. Right. We eat too much with our eyes, don't we?
Yeah, no, it's very true.
So if it wasn't quite perfect, it was deemed at second grade. So so I actually then started to put together a business plan, and I applied to DEFRA for a grant under the Rural Enterprise Scheme, for which I was awarded one of those for the marketing of a agricultural product. So it was 9 months of putting together a business plan and submitting it. And
okay, this is again under that encouragement of diversification.
Yes,
basically.
Exactly, for it all to sit, and probably another reason to make me be able to stay at home. I work from here. It's not a bad office, is it? Really?
No, it's beautiful.
It's not a bad place to. Yeah. Not a bad place.
And
has
that gone well? Is that a significant part of the business now? Or?
Yeah. So we launched with just 4 different flavours, and we were selling it in retail pots and also in the catering size. And then the business grew quite quickly, and we were maintaining a level of retail. We actually started to do some work with Waitrose, so that was really good. And at the time, it's a fresh product.
I was going to say, could you work with them because it was longer life?
Yeah, it was difficult, but we were getting an acceptable shelf life on it for them. And at the time, fresh soup was a whole new market. There was us and, Covent Garden were the real kind of openers to it, really. Absolutely. They were the... so it was quite a novelty. Yeah. Now, it's completely different. There's a massive market out there. In fact, we don't make the soup now for the retail pots. It was just became too... it just wasn't cost effective, and we weren't going to buy our carrots in frozen from Poland, or that was going against any of my beliefs, and so I didn't want to cut the corners.
It's a shame, isn't it? But then, it's hard to compete because other people do.
Exactly right.
Yeah, frustrating.
It's really frustrating. Really frustrating when the intimation sometimes is that they're not cutting those corners. Yeah. So it's... So
you still produce it?
So we still produce the soup. So we just took a different line on it, and now we work in just the catering sizes, and again it goes through our brilliant infrastructure of wholesalers, and it's sent to cafes.
Yeah, so this is more for the bar and restaurant trade.
Absolutely, yeah. Okay. But also, as that was happening, and obviously the soup was more seasonal, and that was a big thing for us. We were keeping it seasonal, so we would only work with seasonal produce. Nice. And that's why we had to change the flavours, and that was difficult for some people to get their head around. They couldn't understand why we weren't making the same flavours all year round. Well, leeks in June really aren't in their best. Really. So that was something we really strongly believed in, and we still do. So it's very much on the seasonal. So we rotate the flavours regularly. In amongst all that, you get gluts of tomatoes, and you get. Then I was buying we were doing a sweet potato and pear with Dorset Blue Vinny soup, and I was buying my pears from a local grower down near Bridport, Elwell Fruit Farm, and I remember going to see William once and picking up a whole. Talking to him, and he said, "Well, I've got these I've got these cooking pears. Basically, it was a pack and pear." He said, "Do you got any use for them?" Let's have a go. So actually, we took them on and developed a pear chutney. Okay. So we were putting the pears in the soup, and then we started a pear chutney, and that was the first chutney we started, which was absolutely brilliant. Yeah, amazing. And we're still doing that now.
Yeah. So what's in the range now then? You've got the cheese, you've got soup, you've got chutney. Is there any more?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. There's a couple of there's a new product up the sleeve that we hope we'll be launching in the next couple of months, which is quite exciting. Hopefully we can get that right.
Is that a teaser? You're not telling us
what it is? Absolutely not. No, I'm going to hold on to that one for a minute.
Great.
But yeah, so the chutney, we've got a very modest range just for that we've got. We've got a Woodbridge chutney, which is a pear and spices. We've got a tomato chutney. Then we've got some sweet pickled cucumbers as well, which is almost one of our signature.
Nice
products.
And these are all under the Blue name or Blue
Vinny?
So
they're all under the Dorset.
Dorset Blue.
Right. Yeah. So it's Dorset Blue soup and Dorset Blue Vinny. And we actually trade Dorset differently and farmed it, so it's thrown a few complications.
Yeah, I was just trying to remember.
But it's really about it all being here at Woodbridge. The home of Dorset Blue Vinny.
And all the produce then in the soups and the chutneys tends to be fairly local then, is it?
Absolutely. I mean, the cucumber one came about because we were picking up our tomatoes from a local grower near Yeovil. And they were growing for one of the big four. And we went over one day to pick up the tomatoes, and there in this stainless steel bin is a whole mass of cucumbers that unfortunately weren't making the grade because they were wonky.
Wow.
I said, "What are you doing with those?"
Foraging in people's barns.
We're going through the bins, yeah. So I said, "Well, we'll have them. Well, let's go for it. So that's how that one really started. And actually, that's that's been a really exciting.
That's really good. And does that continue? Can they supply you generally the wonky ones, or do you now have to buy the good ones as well?
Yeah, so we get a bit of both now because actually the product, I know that was a tricky one, isn't it? You go, oh, I'll have all that, I'll have that. And then, oh, crikey, actually people are buying this product. Oh my gosh, I need some more now. And, in fact, it's a product we've just started supplying Hall and Woodhouse with within the last month. And that's been sort of 4 years in the trying. And,
it's good. I think it's so important for food waste, isn't it? Because so much energy goes into food production.
Yes.
So much food gets wasted because it's wonky, which is bonkers.
Yes.
And it's important it's got use. And why on earth would we be importing carrots from Eastern Europe when we've got all the stuff over here that's being wasted? It's just crazy. We just need people to pay an extra 20p for whatever they're buying to kind of use the local stuff, rather than the cheap imports.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, that's an argument we can have with milk as well. That's another political hot potato, isn't it? Really, but for us, if we got, a lot of people don't know what they really pay for milk. They want it, they need it. That's in the. For us, if we got paid an extra penny, then that's over £2,000 a month for us.
Wow.
It's.
Okay. So your milk is going to the supermarkets, is it?
No, so we don't. We supply what milk we don't use. We supply to barbers who then make cheddar as well. So so we only use about 35% of our milk, and the rest goes to farmers that ditch it. Yeah.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, so you're still avoiding the supermarkets, which is good, because that whole issue around. If milk is, as my understanding, is fundamentally subsidised in supermarkets, is that still the case?
A loss leader.
Yeah, loss leader, and therefore that is having it's a because you see it in the news, but you never really understand. But it's a genuine impact on farmers. This constant kind of price pressure, and is that improving? Because I think the supermarkets would like to make you believe that some sort of compromise has been reached and there is some kind of balance, or is that still a ridiculous amount of pressure?
It's the bizarre thing about the industry is that we are the only industry that somebody will tell us what they are prepared to pay for that product once they've taken it. We haven't come that far from where we were 25 years ago with regards to the price of production and all that, in as much as we're getting paid very similar amounts to what we would have been 25, 30, it is, when you think of electricity, how that's gone up, labour, how much that's gone up, feed has gone up, fertiliser has gone up, everything has gone up, but what we're paid for our milk is certainly out of kilter of all of that. And it's an industry that you get told what you're going to
I find it mind-blowing. I find it amazing that it hasn't been resolved yet, because nobody you speak to kind of goes it's acceptable or even comprehensible. So
and the impact of, like I said, a penny, just 1p makes such an enormous difference to the farmer that I just don't believe the housewife would notice 1p.
No, agreed. So the pressure is from the supermarkets, presumably.
There you go.
That's your poker face. Not a supply them. You can say what you like. So back to Blue Vinny before we go down another badger hole.
Let's do that. Yes,
awards. So you've won a lot of awards. Any of particular significance to you? Particularly memorable ones? You've had a good couple of years on awards.
Yeah,
I think.
we have. We've had a brilliant 6 months. To be honest, Mark, it's a really lovely recognition for the team who've worked jolly hard,
What's your favourite one?
They're all favourites, aren't they? I think it's just really nice to be recognised sometimes. We had one 10 days ago from the Artisan Cheese Awards, which was the winner of the protected food names class. So we'd have been up against some fairly stiff competition. And actually the tasting notes arrived yesterday, and you think, oh, they were so lovely. And it's just really nice to hear. You are beavering away and it can drive you mad at times. And just the industry, with the food industry, is always a bit of paper to fill in or somebody wanting something else. And sometimes it takes you away from what you really, really want or what you began or why you started it. And so when you actually, get somebody say it's pretty good.
It's good.
It's nice to hear. Yeah. And they recognised my dad last year for as a Dorset Food and Farming Award. And, my dad's He's right up there for me.
Yeah, that's really good. Was he proud?
Oh yeah, he's really proud. He's really proud.
Because some farmers are so humble and kind of dismissive, and because they're such grafters. But it meant something to him, didn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, no, definitely. I think he's really proud. I think there are probably even moments that he's quite proud. He's got me and Richard here carrying on his legacy. You know,
good.
It's a whole different world now. You know, I mean, my dad is, was an absolutely brilliant farmer and had the forethought to diversify and be an ambassador. But it's different now. The business has left him behind now in a sad sort of way. I think sometimes, he wouldn't know how to switch on a computer.
I was going to say, presumably not so much from the production side, but from the how you market it, how you brand it, how you promote it. Is it more that side, being on Instagram and email and all that kind of stuff? Day-to-day
running, yeah. I mean, he's still down there. He still gets, he grades the cheese, and we've tried to make his life a bit easier for him, really, But
he still enjoys it though. He's down there in production, isn't he?
Oh yeah, he's still down there. Yeah. He's still.
That's exciting. It's good. So, how big are the team now? Then you mean any business is a team effort, and
absolutely
make it very clear that it's not all about you or even
definitely
your dad.
Not.
But how many people are here now?
Definitely not. So we've got 2 down in the cheese room, 2 full-time down in the cheese room.
Yeah.
And we've got a full-time dairyman and 2 on the farm, and my brother on the farm side, and then on the soup and chutney side. We've got 4 of us. 4 of us are over there. So, it's a little team. So we're under 10, aren't we? But it's
and think you'll grow it more, or happy where you're at?
No, you're always really looking to grow, to improve, to be more efficient, to look to new avenues. I mean, with social media and the onset of all that, I mean, it's changed it dramatically. It's even faster moving really now, isn't it? The contact is great. We still like to pick the phone up though.
Yeah.
I love that. I'm not sure always email is.
It's funny actually. We did some research recently in the restaurant, which stunned me to find out that 91% of our customers still book by telephone, which I was really surprised by, because I think we have this obsession of making sure we're available on email, and we've got online booking widgets and all that kind of stuff. But 91% book by phone, and something like 76% book within 3 hours of arrival.
Is that right?
And I was like, well, that's what I would literally never have guessed that. We've changed it a little bit deliberately, because actually if people book on online, it's easier for us than taking the phone. But it's fun, isn't it? I think as human beings, and this is why I love food and drinks, why I love hospitality, is fundamentally, I think it's in our DNA that we like to sit around a table and break bread and drink some wine or have a cup of coffee. It's the reason that I do these podcasts face to face and don't do it by Skype, is for me it's all about that human. You can't work in hospitality, I don't think, and want to manage all of your relationships by the internet. I think it's essential that we get out, and knowing where food comes from is exactly the same for me. It's kind of it's made by human beings, and I want to know the people that make it, and I want to know their stories. I don't know why, because I get the people who say, some people don't care. They just see food is fuel and that's it.
That's right.
But I think that there's so much effort and graft and work and stories that goes on behind the scenes. It's exciting to see.
Yeah, I think it's really exciting, and I think on that we started a pop-up shop 4 years ago, and the whole reason I started that was because we had second grade cheese, we had offcuts of cheese, and we couldn't use it all in the soup. And so what are we going to do? There's nothing wrong with the cheese, absolutely wrong. I said, right, I'm going to try a pop-up shop. So I've got a converted horse box, and I dragged it out on the side of the road, and I just set up shop there with offcuts of cheese, our chutney. It was all about us. It's all about us. So and away we go. And it's absolutely brilliant. I love it. I think inside every little girl there's a little shop. Yeah. And I absolutely love it. But it's that contact with human. It's talking about our story, people wanting to share our story. The local support I've had has been absolutely phenomenal. I can't thank them enough. And that's what I wanted. But going back to like our wonky carrots and our wonky cucumbers, I've got offcuts of cheese. If I have what I suppose we think of as a normal shaped piece of cheese, it will be the last one left. Everybody takes the wonky, the miscuts, the misshapes, because they say it's more authentic. It's real. Oh, I don't worry about that. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
Absolutely
it's funny
brilliant.
that we all like that and we all want it, but it's not what we get in our day-to-day shop, is it? So yeah, it's a strange thing. Where do you do those? Here at the farm?
So here at the farm, every other Saturday morning. Yeah,
every other Saturday. Okay,
yeah. So we tend, and it was all, we put it out on social media, we put it on the website, the dates. Sometimes it varies because it is a pop-up shop. There are other things that might just happen. So, but it's all about us. There's rice pudding because we use the cream from the milk off the cheese, so we make rice pudding.
You only make rice pudding for the pop-up?
For the pop-up?
You don't supply
No,
I love
we
rice
don't.
pudding. I'm coming.
Excellent. It's a love or hate, isn't it?
Yeah.
But yes, and our chutney. And then we work with Oxford's. They do the Dorset Blue Vinny bread. They do some cheese twists. We work with the Real Cure at Shaftesbury. He does a salami with fig and our cheese in. Wow. So it's all about us.
Nice.
Yeah.
And that's just for what, half a day or all day?
Yeah, so that's literally from 9 till 12:30 on a Saturday morning. Yeah.
Excellent. You normally in there?
Very often it's me and
you get to chat to the customers, because it's a fair point. If you deal with the wholesalers, you don't hear probably the amount of love that I hear for you and your product out there in the industry. All the chefs know it and want to make sure it's on the menu. Whereas we're very lucky in the restaurant trade. We're very lucky we get instantaneous feedback. We're also very unlucky because we get lots of rude people who, especially on social media, where they don't have to use their names.
Yes.
Don't get me started. I'm ranting about that. So, as you become more known and you get more known in the business, and I suppose, I don't know if there's less or more barriers to entry. We mentioned social media. There just seems to be a real speed of change in lots of sectors at the moment, and it's quite disruptive. And you've got this, incredible history of Blue Vinny in your family for a long time, but in culturally for even longer. Are you noticing a lot more competition now? Has it become harder to kind of fight your corner and fight your battle? Is there a lot more cheeses, or actually does it just feel established now and tick over, or is it still?
I think that a little bit of both, to be honest, Mark. There's some hardcore Dorset Blue Vinny supporters that we are extremely lucky to have, and are regularly supporting us. But there's definitely much more competition out there. But I think that can only be good for the industry. For us, more people making cheese, it's people talking about cheese. Any cheese, whether it's a blue cheese, whether it's another cheddar, any part of the, anybody that wants to take on making food, making cheese in particular, is got to be good for us. Yeah.
That's interesting. A lot of people's, because are you therefore noticing a change in more people being interested in locally made cheeses and not the cheap imports and stuff like that? Do you think people are caring more where their food comes from because of that?
I think there's definitely a level of wanting to know. I do sometimes feel, I think it's those that want to know will make the effort to find out. It's, sometimes you feel you're preaching to the converted. When you go somewhere like we go to Stilton Cheese Festival, I mean, I don't know, there might be, I don't know how many cheeses at Stilton. I'm ashamed to say. I should know how many cheeses are exhibiting at the Stilton Cheese Festival, but it's phenomenal, and people's interest. But you wouldn't go to Stilton Cheese Festival probably if you didn't really like cheese too much. True, or you would, but there's lots of other things. But it's, I think people, definitely there are people that are interested in. Yeah,
well, the reason I ask is a lot of people have said the same thing, because I would be, I suppose it depends on the type of competition, but chatting, for example, to Joel from Bad Hand Coffee about the impact of your Starbucks and your Costas and all that, where I would presume they'd go, they're bloody irritating, they drive me bonkers. But actually he was like, you know what, that they're a stepping stone away from instant, and actually getting people interested in drinking, reasonably decent coffee. The natural evolution of that is they want to upgrade, and then they end up at his coffee, and he's like, actually every Costas and Starbucks that opens is probably a benefit to me ultimately. And I hadn't even realised that. And then I was chatting to some craft brewers who were like, actually, the first place they tried an interesting not multinational pale ale was at Wetherspoons, and much as it disappointed me that was their route into the market, what it led to was then, actually, that's actually quite an interesting beer, and it's a bit different. And then they go on that trajectory and they end up as micro brewers. So I do think there's room for both. But it's funny that you say the same thing.
Yeah.
Actually, the more people coming into the market, the more people that talk about cheese, the more people are interested. Hopefully
Absolutely.
they end up with you as the the pinnacle. And as you do more and you get more of a reputation, I don't know, and I think probably particularly as a woman in business, maybe, do you get a lot of people coming and asking you advice and questions about how to run a business or how to get into this industry? And have you heard anything, or your own opinion, have you heard anything really bad where you go, that's just complete rubbish and complete nonsense? Or have you heard anything really good, or any nugget that you give people where you go, yes, that's what you need to be a success?
I guess you're learning the whole time, aren't you? You know, there's something will happen we had an incident yesterday, and we're all like, wow, are we living under some sort of stone sometimes? You know, people always surprise you, don't they? Not always for the best. Not always for the best. And, you know, it's, you've got to just have your wits about you a little bit, haven't you? Yeah. And stand your ground, you know, to some degree. And possibly that's a little bit about being a woman in business, because there are plenty of men out there that don't like dealing with us, really? You know, and we are a female team on the side for the cheese, and it always makes us laugh, really. Yeah, we've come a long way, you know, and yes, it's always interesting. Yes, it's always interesting. But no, I don't, you know, it's hard work. There'll be good days, there'll be bad days. It's moving so quickly, which is great fun and really exciting. But ultimately, it's really, really rewarding. Yeah, really, really rewarding.
Good. I think that's key, isn't it? You've got to love it.
Absolutely.
And probably not start with the motivation of money, but start with the motivation
leave that one right behind. Yeah. Enjoy the moments of talking to people. Be proud of what we do. You know, get that good team behind you and enjoy it. Yeah, you've got to enjoy it.
Good. Well, congratulations on all you've achieved, because it's great. It's great for the county. It's great for producers. Where can people go if they want to buy your cheese? Can they buy it directly from you then, or not? They need to go to
so come and visit us either on the pop-up shop, which would always welcome you here during those shop times. Visit the website, because we have got an online facility on there, so that's always really nice if you want to send it further. So you can post direct. So we can post direct. Yeah. Or indeed look for us in independent delis, farm shops. And if you're in any doubt, just drop us an email, because we can then locate it for you and send you in the right direction. And just get in touch, talk to us.
Okay. And social media, or on the
we're on social media on all the channels. Yes. So follow us on all of those.
Yeah. And, just type in Blue Vinny cheese, presumably.
Dorset Blue Vinny.
Dorset
Blue Vinny, and we should pop up.
And you'll pop up.
Yeah, okay. Hopefully so.
Good. Well, it's a real pleasure to come and see your space and to meet you finally, having heard your name so many times and the cheese's name. Congratulations, and good luck for the future. And I'm looking forward to a couple of months until the next product release. And whatever it is, I'm going to come and try it. So thank you, Emily, for sparing the time.
Thank you, Mark.
So there you have it. You have reached the end of another episode of the Humans of Hospitality podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Please go and visit our website, humansofhospitality.co.uk, for the show notes and extra episodes and information. And whilst you're there, don't forget to sign up for our newsletter and to receive free materials all about the humans behind our incredible industry. Lastly, if you could subscribe, rate and review this podcast, you will be massively helping me out, and it would be hugely appreciated. Thank you so much. We'll be launching another podcast in just 7 days' time. Cheers.